and say, if it was the scale degree from the Lydian, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, the 13 equivalent to the 6, right? That would be the idea. Okay, erase. Is there a way to erase everything at the same time? I'm sure there is. I need to know the keystroke for erasing everything. That would be cool. If you really were a professor, you'd know how to do. Okay, Lydian. So the scale degree would be a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 because it would all be off by 1. And then the modes that are involved would be all of the notes, but they're going to be in order of the 4, the 6, then 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 2. All right, I want to try to do one more to get all the majors in place here. What did I do here? Get that out of here. What are you doing? All right. So the other major key is the 5, the Mixolydian. So this is like the bluesy one. So if I was on it, I want to keep that as the 5. I'm going to call it an X for Mixolydian so it doesn't look like a major or minor to keep it distinct. So we're going to call it, what would it normally call it if I had a 3-note Mixolydian? We would call it a G major, right? And that makes sense, kind of, because now the 3, the 1, 4, 5 are all major chords. That's what we learn. The 1, 4, 5 are major chords. And that chord is kind of unique because it's a G major. And so it would always be, it is kind of what it is from that standpoint, but it doesn't tell me the more important thing, contextually within the song, where does it lie, right? Is it, am I playing in the key of the Ionian and that happens to be, the 5 chord of the Ionian, which is a G major, or am I playing in Lydian, the F Lydian, and that happens to be within, or is that the tonic and I'm playing in, I don't know. But it would be better if I just called it, hey, look, this is the Mixolydian G2, which would be a 3-note Mixolydian G chord. Why is that better? Because then if I was playing in the key of C, I know that this is the Mixolydian chord. It would be the 5 chord. You could call it that. I was debating calling it a 5G2 chord because that would tell you from a Nashville number system. You could do that, but I don't think it's as good if you want to add more to your system after that. But you could do that. So it's the 5 chord. You would know that. And if it was the tonic, you could make this capital. That's another reason I kind of like this, because you can't do that with numbers. You can say, well, it's the capital here. So that means it's the tonic. That means by looking at this, I can't tell if I'm playing this a major, a G major, right? Because I couldn't tell if that was a G major. I couldn't tell if it was a G Lydian, and I couldn't tell if it was a G Mixolydian. But if I see this, I can say, oh, that's going to be a Mixolydian, which I know the triad is equivalent in shape to a major triad, and I know where it is on the guitar, and I know that because it's Mixolydian, that what the overall shape looks like automatically, and I know what the tonal center is all at the same time with just that format. That's more important contextually, song-wise, than saying, well, the G major is when you write it this way, there's no other note that it could possibly be. Well, that's great, but it doesn't tell you what we want to know contextually within the song. Right? We're trying to make a song out of it, right? I want to know information about the context of the music. So the Mixolydian, we'd say, okay, what is it? You're going to start a distance of 0, 2, 4. So that would mean that if I was on the Mixolydian, we'd say we're here 1, 3, 5 from a scale degree, or 0, 2, 4, right? So that means Mixolydian, Locrian, Dorian would be the name of it. Between the 1 and the 3, or the 0 and the 4, there's going to be a 4-note actual distance, and that's why it's a major versus a minor mode. We'll get into the minor modes later, and we'll talk about intervals more later as well. But we just want to get the intuitive understanding of why this would be easier. So from a scale degree standpoint, we would call it, if we made the 5 the 1, then it would be a 1, 3, 5. But I don't want to make the 5 the 1. I'd rather keep the 5 the 5, because that allows me to name all the nodes in it, which is super cool, particularly on the guitar. I can say if I start on the 5, I go up by 2 to the 7, up by 2, 7, 8, is a 1, 1, and then a 2. 7, 1, 2. So that means I can name the Mixolydian triad by saying it's the 572. It's the Mixolydian, Locrian, Dorian node. And it is that no matter which of the 12 keys we're in, which is cool. All right, well, this is where it gets funny. So now let's say that we make a 4-note Mixolydian. What happened? Why isn't this called G major with a 7 of some kind? Because the Mixolydian doesn't line up to the major, so it didn't fit the convention because the convention is wacky. So the blues guys and the jazz guys are like, hey, we need to come up with a convention for the 7 chords, which are basically the Mixolydian mode. They could have just called it, these are the Mixolydian intervals. I'm going to make this for the Mixolydian intervals. That would be the thing that makes sense, but it's not what we're doing anywhere else. So they just called it a G7. So that means, what does this mean now? Well, if you say that it's a major, then that means it's going to be a major versus a minor is going to be minor. And then the Mixolydian, we're still going to call major if it only has a triad, because the triad isn't different. It's the 7 that's different. As soon as you go up 1 from the triad, a 4-note chord, the 7 has a flat 7, and that's when the G7 comes in. So this new format, not saying it's major or minor, but just putting the number right after the letter, is what's going to be used all the way out once we get to the 7 plus in the Mixolydian mode. But again, it would be better just to call it a Mixolydian. Why don't we just call it, hey, this is an XG3, or you can use a Nashville number system, a 5G3, right? That would be easier because it tells you the context of the song. And you can also call it a capital XG3 because, once again, that'll tell you the context of the song. So this kind of tells you the context because it kind of says, if you see a G7, you're like, that sounds like a bluesy thing. That sounds like it's a Mixolydian kind of thing that's happening here. But it doesn't really tell you the context of the song. It would be nice if we just called it Mixolydian and said these are the intervals of the song. Okay, now it gets a little bit wonky. I won't get into the weeds on that, but so what would we name it? Mixolydian 0, 2, 4. So we start on the Mixolydian, go up 2, and then up another 2 and up another 2. Let's see what that would look like.